In the summer of 1914, Britain was the center of a globally dominant empire. Its citizens lived in a world of apparent stability, protected by a navy that ruled the oceans, and a long-standing peace that had left the current generation with no memory of a major conflict. That stability was upended by a single assassination. On June 28th, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was shot dead in Sarajevo. International alliances meant a Balkan crisis pulled in the great powers. Austria attacked Serbia, Russia mobilized, Germany declared war on Russia and France. Britain's treaty obligated defending Belgium. When Germany crossed the border, Britain issued an ultimatum. Germany ignored it. At 11 p.m. on August 4th, Britain was at war. A series of grand geopolitical promises had instantly committed a generation of untested young men to a continental catastrophe. The response from the public was a massive, immediate wave of volunteerism. Men from factories, universities, and farms flooded recruitment centers. By the end of 1914, over 1 million men had signed up to fight. This enthusiasm was fueled by a societal pressure that framed enlistment as a glorious duty. Government posters and community campaigns suggested that those who didn't wear the uniform were cowards, making military service the only acceptable path for a young man. Most of these recruits had no concept of modern warfare. The general consensus in the streets was that the conflict would be a short, decisive adventure, with the troops returning home by Christmas. This imperial pride was used to build a civilian army that crossed the English Channel entirely unaware of the industrial-scale slaughter that waited for them. The Western Front quickly devolved into a landscape of squalor. Soldiers lived in narrow, flooded ditches where the earth turned into a freezing slurry. They shared these spaces with rats the size of cats and the constant smell of decay. Days were defined by the psychological strain of waiting under the constant threat of heavy artillery, enduring the relentless, earth-shaking concussions of a bombardment that could last for days at a time. On Christmas Day 1914, a rare moment of shared humanity broke through the violence. Along parts of the front, British and German soldiers climbed out of their trenches, met in no man's land, exchanging cigarettes and stories in the frozen mud. As the sun set, the soldiers returned to their dugouts. The ordinary men on both sides were pulled back into the dehumanizing machinery of a lethal system they could not stop. Attacking meant going over the top. This required soldiers to climb out of their trenches and walk directly into a landscape of barbed wire and concentrated machine gun fire. This chart shows casualties for the first day of the Somme. On July 1, 1916, 57,470 British soldiers fell, the bloodiest day in British Army history. By the offensive's end, casualties reached 420,000, all for an advance of just a few miles into enemy territory. The Somme ended the illusion of a glorious war. Military strategy had become an exercise in futility, where progress was measured in yards gained and tens of thousands of lives sacrificed. The guns finally fell silent on November 11, 1918. Britain had secured a military victory, but the atmosphere at home was heavy with the cost of that achievement. Over 700,000 British soldiers were dead. Millions more returned with physical amputations or the invisible psychological scars of PTSD, forever changing the lives of their families. Because many regiments were raised from specific communities, the delivery of daily telegrams could effectively wipe out the youth of an entire village in a single afternoon. The national confidence of the pre-war empire was gone. In its place was a permanent, collective grief that touched every street and community in Britain. Today, those scars are still visible in almost every British town. Stone memorials list the names of local men who went to France and never came home. Every November 11th, the country stops for 2 minutes of silence. This nationwide tradition is a direct response to the scale of that loss. This act of remembrance is not a celebration of military power. It is a permanent vow to remember the ordinary men who were asked to pay the ultimate price.